Hi, I'm Josh, and I'm really glad you're here with me today. The month of November was a fairly slow month for board gaming. I only got 4 games played. The real star of the month for gaming was actually a video game. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. If you hear that and you're like, oh, come on, I play board games to get away from screens of video games. That's why I have the video divided up into chapters. You can skip that part if you want to. But before I get into games played, I'll talk about the acquisitions of the month. I have Patchwork here, which I mentioned a couple months ago. I was playing at Paul's house. This was his copy of Patchwork, and I spilled a bit of soy sauce on some of his game components, and I was like, okay, I'm going to get you a new game. And Paul was like, no, don't bother. It's cleaned up nicely. I don't play it very often, but I was like, I can't spill food on somebody's game and not replace it for them. So I actually went out and picked up the Halloween version of Patchwork for Paul and gave it to him, and then he kindly gave me his copy of Patchwork, which it's fine. It got cleaned up nicely. I don't think there's really anything wrong with it. And it's just quite a fun little 2-player tile placement game with funky polyomino shaped tiles, which is kind of a genre-if game I enjoy. It's funny, I didn't even think about it, but this game, Wild Tiled West, was Paul's as well, because at about this time last year, I got Wild Tiled West for Paul for his birthday, and we played it, and he thought it was a decent game, but he didn't love it, and I'm the type of person who is super happy when I get a gift for somebody, and they say, it was okay. Wasn't great. I'd much rather that than them say, oh, thank you so much, it was amazing. Because for one thing, it doesn't help me with getting them future gifts, and for another thing, my feelings just are not hurt. So anyways, I enjoyed the game more than Paul did, so I offered to make a trade with him, and we eventually worked out a deal where I gave him a couple games in exchange for Wild Tiled West, so that's how I ended up with this one in November. And November is also the month where I started to really explore the whole vast world of video gaming. So with an overwhelming choice of so many amazing looking games, I did actually purchase several on Steam that were on sale and marked down like 80–90%. And of all those games, I was like, which is going to be the first one that I really dive into, because I ended up picking Subnautica, a game that's about 7 years old. You don't come to me for the new hotness for board games, so why would it be the same for video games? And what appealed to me about the game is that it takes place in this underwater world, and it's just a really cool looking game. It looks mostly calming and a little bit terrifying, but I'm a bit of a sucker for games that involve underwater exploration, so that's the one I decided to go with, and I picked it up. And I would like to actually make a dedicated video talking about this game once I have finished it. But before I get into the board games that I played in the month, let me just really briefly talk about Subnautica. Now, there are things that I love about this game and things that I really don't like about it. So the general genre is it's classified as a survival game. The premise is you are a lone survivor of a spaceship that has crashed onto this planet. You were shot off in this life pod and landed in the ocean because this planet is largely covered with ocean. And so you're there on your own. It's just a single player game, and you are left to figure out what is going on and what you can do about it. Before I get to the positives, one thing I'll say is that one thing I hate about video games in general is anything that makes you grind for stuff I cannot stand. Or even roguelike games where you have to keep repeating a level until you conquer it and can advance to the next thing. As soon as I start to have repetition, having to do the same thing over and over again, I instantly lose interest. When I play a game, I want to be constantly progressing forward in the story and the narrative and exploring new things, and not be stuck having to grind and do the same thing over and over again. Now, one thing with these survival games, of course, is you have to go out and find resources, and that's kind of the main way you can advance in the game, is by just going out grabbing resources. I will say that there are 3 modes that you can play the game in. There is the very simple kind of creative mode where there's no consequences really for anything. You just go out there and you play. There's the kind of full experience of the game, which is the opposite of that, where you have to not only manage your health, but you have to manage your hunger by eating regularly, and you have to manage your thirst by drinking regularly. And then there's the middle between the two, which is what I've been doing, which is where I do have to worry about my health. I can die, and I do die quite a bit, but I don't have to worry about constantly finding food and water to eat and drink, because that would just drive me right up the wall, and I don't think I could keep playing the game. But even though I don't have to go out and find this food and water, I still have to be constantly out just finding resources over and over and over for all the things I need to build and discover and advance in the game. Now, that is annoying to me, but the rest of the game is just so well done in that there is this narrative story that you advance as you play the game. However, you can pretty much advance the story at your own pace, and the rest of the time you can just explore, you can collect resources and build underwater bases, and you can spend as much time as you want making these bases as big and elaborate as you like, and just kind of playing in the world. And then whenever you're ready to advance to the next part of the story, you can go ahead and do whatever you need to do to get that done. So it's really well designed in that aspect. It's also really well designed in the way it levels up. So you start in kind of a shallow part of the ocean, and you're really unable to do much in terms of getting down to explore, and so you're stuck with just finding basic resources, doing simple basic things. But as you collect resources, advance technologies, build things, you can start to go deeper in the game, and as you go deeper, even though you are now better equipped, you deal with more dangerous monsters. So it doesn't become any easier by any means. The level of difficulty remains the same. And again, this progression happens where then again you further advance, you get further resources and equipment, you dive even deeper, you find even more dangerous monsters and things to deal with. And so it is really well designed in terms of that progression from starting with nothing and getting down and being really well equipped. I will say though that the game leaves players very much on your own in terms of it does not tell you anything about what to do or how to do it. Fortunately, when I started playing it, my youngest son Wyatt said, "Oh, Subnautica, I know this game." I guess he's seen some videos on it or whatever. So he kind of sat beside me and was watching me play when I was starting out. And apparently he knew enough to sort of guide me in a few basic things of how to get started. Otherwise, as a new video gamer, I would have been completely lost. And again, I don't think I could have got through the game. But with Wyatt there to help me out, and the help of Google to kind of look up how to do certain things, and eventually to pull up a full map so I can kind of figure out where things are and how to get around a little bit better, you know, cheat things that just make my life a little bit easier. I was able to kind of learn how the game works and kind of really get into it. Because again, it's not at all geared towards, I think, a new video gamer like me who has no idea how things work. Now, one awesome thing is that Wyatt has been loving the experience of just hanging out with me, watching me play, and every so often I'll pass the controller over to him, especially when it requires navigating through very tight and twisty environments, because I am super susceptible to motion sickness. This is one minor issue I've had with the game a couple of times, is I had to stop playing because I was getting so sick of the movement. But Wyatt will help me out when I get into tight, twisty spaces that really make that bad. But half the time when I offer to let him take over controls, he's just more than happy to sit and watch me play, which at first I thought was weird, and then I realized, oh yeah, all the kids these days are watching videos or live streams of other people playing games. So it's kind of a normal thing to spend your time sitting and watching other people have fun, I guess. But he enjoys it a ton. I enjoy doing it with him. So it's been a great thing for the two of us to do together. I spent a solid 50 hours probably throughout the month of November playing this game. So it was nice to have that, seeing as I didn't get many chances to play board games. Actually, sorry, 50 hours would have been the total for probably the first 6 weeks I played the game. It was more like 30 hours for November. The point is, quite a long time spent. But again, a lot of that being quality time hanging out with my younger son, and that's definitely a big part of what's pushed me forward to keep getting through the game. Just to throw out a rating for this game, again, being a new video gamer, I don't really have anything to compare it to. I would say it's probably a 7 out of 10. The having to grind to find resources and stuff and randomly stumble across blueprints that'll help you create equipment to advance in the game, that's kind of annoying. And then just the complete lack of a basic kind of introduction of the very basics of what you need to do to get going is a little bit difficult, but everything else about the game and the design and the fun I've had is fantastic. So I should probably actually give it a 7.5. Let's go with that. Now, leaving behind the video gaming and talking about the board games in order of my lowest rated game to my highest rated game, we start with a game of Magic the Gathering that I played with my friend who primarily plays Magic with me. I was excited because I got to pull out a couple of my Lord of the Rings themed decks. I played as the Sauron deck versus Saruman. So we teamed up the two kind of bad leaders against each other, and it turned into quite a long and epic game, partly because both of us were quite mana-starved for the first while, which the whole mana thing is Magic's biggest design flaw as far as I'm concerned. But eventually we were both able to gear up and get going. We were trading blows back and forth. We had both got each other down to 8 life, and unfortunately we had to stop and call it a draw at that point because my friend had to go to another thing that he had to get to. So because of how long the game went on, we ran out of time, which was really unfortunate because we were really gearing up to an epic finale after all that prep time, and it was working out really well with the two decks playing against each other. But yeah, I just continued to enjoy the Lord of the Rings stuff, obviously. I rate Magic a 7.5 out of 10. Sticking with the Lord of the Rings theme, Paul and I played our second game of the Lord of the Rings Duel for Middle-earth, which is the reimplementation of Seven Wonders Duel. We switched sides this time. This time I played the Fellowship, Paul played as Sauron, and I was really dominating on the map section of the game with the armies, which I was feeling great about because I figured if I really pushed it hard, I could maybe win an instant victory on the map. There are 3 instant victory conditions. One is dominating the map, one is allying with 6 different races of the realm, and then the final one is either the ring getting to Mount Doom or the Nazgul catching their ring bearers. So I figured I could push for the instant win, but even if neither of us hit an instant win condition, the winner is the person who has dominated the best on the map. So I figured, okay, even if I can get to the game end without the instant win, I feel pretty good about getting a victory in that manner. But here's the thing, in order to dominate in one of those 3 areas, you really have to neglect the other 2 areas. So while I was really pushing hard on the map, Paul was really pushing hard on moving those Nazgul towards the ring bearers. And unfortunately that ended up catching up with me, literally. The Nazgul caught the ring bearers about halfway through the 3rd age, and Paul pulled off an instant win as Sauron. So it's just such a super fun game. Like I said last month, it really distills Seven Wonders Duel into a very simple but similar game type, and the game plays so quickly once you know what you're doing. What's interesting is that both Paul and I had rated this version of the game, Duel for Middle-earth, an 8 out of 10 on our first play, but after our second play, both of us increased our rating to 8.5 out of 10. So this is definitely an instant hit. Moving on to another game that's, again, pretty much one of my newest games is Age and Avenue. I continued to play that in November. I did talk about it quite a bit last month, so you can watch last month's video, my October games played, if you want to know more about it. But I continued to get it played several times with both of my kids, which is super fun, because last month I had played it with Evan several times, and this month Wyatt asked me to play it with him. And so we played several games, because again, another super fast game. I think most games aren't going to take more than about 5 minutes, 10 minutes max. And so this is a game where essentially you have a hand of cards. Every turn, the active player is laying one of their cards face up and one of their cards face down. And then the other player has to either choose the face up card or the face down card. Whichever card they choose is going to determine how their player moves on the circular board, whereas the card that they allow their opponent to keep determines how their piece will move. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to catch your opponent on this little circular board before they can get around and catch you. So it's all about moving quickly or even moving your opponent backwards and that sort of thing. In one of the games that Wyatt and I played, Wyatt was taking the first turn. he put out his face up and face down cards for me to choose from. I chose a card that allowed my piece to move forward, and the card that he was left with forced him to move his piece backwards. And when I moved my piece forward, I landed on one of the black market corner spots, which allowed me to get a bonus card that moved me forward again. And I caught him and I won without even taking a turn in the game. Wyatt just took that one turn, and it was resulted in a win for me, which was pretty funny. But this is just, again, such a super two-player card game, super easy, super fast, but so fun. I rate the game 9 out of 10. When I played it with Paul, he gave it a rating of 8.5 out of 10. Evan gave it a rating of 9.25 out of 10. And when I played it this month with Wyatt, he said he rates it an 8.5 out of 10. So none of us rated the game below 8.5 out of 10, which tells you how good a game it is. And then best of the month was, once again, Spirit Island. Paul and I played this cooperative game using the Branch and Claw and Jagged Earth expansions. We both chose medium difficulty spirits from the Jagged Earth expansions, which I think are the lowest difficulty of those expansion spirits. I played one called Shifting Memory of Ages, and Paul played as a spirit named Stone's Unyielding Defiance. And it turned out that both spirits were powerhouses because they both had ways to generate a lot of energy, and my spirit could also generate a lot of elements, so we ended up pulling off quite an easy victory, which shouldn't be a surprise at this point if both of us are playing medium level difficulty spirits, that we can pull off fairly easy wins. We should probably think about challenging ourselves a little bit more again with our next play, but it's just such a brilliant game. I rate it 9.5 out of 10. Paul rates it a perfect 10 out of 10, and that's why we keep coming back to it. And that was it for my gaming in November. I would really love to hear about video games from you. If you have any games that you would recommend, anything you've been playing recently, do also let me know about your board gaming too. You know that I like to hear about what you're playing, what you're enjoying a lot lately. And I just really appreciate you watching. I really appreciate the Patreon supporters who are still sticking with me and getting me through a season that can be challenging for those of us who don't have a ton of money. So thank you all for your support. Appreciate you so much. Catch you on the next video. Cheers. And if you hear that and go, oh man, I'm here to talk about board. And if you hear that and you're like, oh, come on, I'm here to listen to board. And what it appealed to me, anyways, leaving the video games behind, let's talk about the board games in order of my, whereas the player, Evan weirdly gave it a rating of 9 and